Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 3, Chapter 7. While Stepan Arkadyevitch was off to Petersburg to fulfill the duty so natural and unquestionable to functionaries, however other people may look upon it, of reporting to the ministry and at the same time being well supplied with money, was ready to enjoy himself at the races in his friend's dachas. Dolly, with the children, was on her way to the country in order to reduce the expenses as much as possible. She was going to their country place at Yergoshovo, an estate which had been a part of her dowry. It was where the wood had been sold in the spring, and was situated about 50 versts from Levin's Pokrovsky. The old seigneurial mansion of Yergoshovo had long been in ruins, and the prince had contented himself with enlarging and repairing one of the ells. 20 years before, when Dolly was a little girl, this ell was spacious and comfortable, though in the manner of all ells it was built across an avenue and towards the south. But now it was old and out of repair. When Stepan Arkadyevitch went in the spring to sell the wood, his wife begged him to give a glance at the house and have it made habitable. Stepan Arkadyevitch, like the guilty husband that he was, feeling desirous of making his wife's material existence as comfortable as possible, made haste to have the furniture covered with cretonne, to hang curtains, to clear up the garden, to plant flowers, and to build a bridge across the pond. But he had overlooked many more essential matters, and Darya Alexandrovna was not slow to complain about it. Although Stepan was a solicitous husband and a father, he was constantly forgetting that he had a wife and children, and his tastes remained those of a bachelor. When he got back to Moscow, he took great pride in assuring his wife that everything was in prime order, that he had arranged the house to perfection, and he advised her strongly to go there immediately. This emigration suited him in many ways. The children would enjoy the country, expenses would be lessened, and last, and most essential, he would be freer. Darya Alexandrovna, on her part, felt that it would be a good thing to take the children away after the scarlatina, for the youngest little girl gained very slowly. Moreover, she'd be freed from the importunities of the butcher, the fish dealer, and the baker, which troubled her. And finally, the happy thought occurred to invite her sister Kitty, who was coming home from abroad about the middle of summer, and had been advised to take some cold baths. Kitty wrote her that nothing would delight her so much as to spend the rest of the summer with her at Yergoshovo, that place which was so full of happy childhood memories for both of them. The first part of the time the country life was very tiresome to Dolly. She had lived there when she was a child. Viewed in the light of early recollections, she had expected it to be a refuge from all the trials of city life, and if it was not very gay or elegant, and she hardly expected to find it so, at least it would be comfortable and inexpensive, and the children would be happy. But now, when she came there as mistress of the house, she found things contrary to her expectations. On the morning of their arrival, it began to rain in torrents. The roof was leaking, and the water dripped in the corridor and the nursery, and the little beds had to be brought down into the parlor. It was impossible to find a cook. Among the 9 cows in the barn, according to the dairywoman's report, some were going to calve, and the rest were either too young or too old, and consequently they could not have butter or even milk for the children. Not an egg was to be had. It was impossible to find a hen. They had for roasting and broiling only tough old purple roosters. No babui were to be found to do the washing. All were at work in the fields. They could not drive because one of the horses was balky and wouldn't be harnessed. They had to give up bathing because the bank of the river had been trodden into a quagmire by the cattle, and moreover it was too conspicuous. Walking near the house was not pleasant because the tumble-down fences let the cattle into the garden. And there was in the herd a terrible bull which bellowed and was reported to be ugly. In the house there was not a clothes press. The closet doors either would not shut or flew open when anyone pressed. In the kitchen there were no pots or kettles. In the laundry there were no tubs or even any scrubbing boards for the girls. At first, therefore, Darya Alexandrovna, not finding the rest and peace which she expected, fell into despair. Realizing her helplessness in such a terrible situation, she could not keep back her tears. The overseer, formerly a sergeant, who, on account of his fine presence, had been promoted by Stepan Arkadyevitch from his place as Swiss, made no account of Darya Alexandrovna's tribulations, but simply said in his respectful way, "Can't find anybody, the peasantry are so beastly," and would not stir. The situation seemed hopeless, but in the Oblonsky household, as in all well-regulated homes, there was one humble but still important and useful member, Matryona Filimonovna. She calmed the Baruina, telling her that all would come out right. That was her favorite expression, and Matvey had borrowed it from her, and she went to work without fuss and without bother. She had made the acquaintance of the Prikashchik's wife, and on the very day of their arrival went to take tea with her under the acacias, and discussed with her the ways and means of the household. A sort of club, composed of Matryona Filimonovna, together with the Prikashchik's wife, the starosta, and the bookkeeper, was formed under the trees, and through the deliberations the difficulties one by one disappeared, and everything, as Matryona said, came out all right. The roof was patched up, a cook was found and a friend of the starosta's wife, chickens were bought, the cows began to give milk, the garden fence was repaired, the carpenter drove in hooks and put latches on the closets so that they would not keep flying open, the laundry was set to rights, and the ironing board, covered with soldier's cloth, was extended from the dresser across the back of a chair, and the smell of the ironing came up from below. "Nu, what," said Matryona Filimonovna, pointing to the ironing board. "There's no need of worrying." They even went so far as to build a board bathhouse on the river bank, so that Lily could bathe. Darya Alexandrovna's hope of a comfortable, if not a peaceful, country life became almost realized. Peaceful life was impossible to her with 6 children. If one had an ill turn, another was sure to follow suit, and something would happen to a third, and the fourth would show signs of bad character, and so it always was. Rarely came even short periods of rest. But these very anxieties and troubles were the only chances of happiness that Darya Alexandrovna had. If she had been shut off from this resource, she would have been a prey to her thoughts about a husband who no longer loved her. Besides, these same children who worried her with their little illnesses and faults drove away her sorrows by the pleasures and enjoyments. Her joys were so small that they almost invisible, like gold in sand, and in trying hours she saw only the sorrows, the sand. But there were also happy moments, when she saw only the joys, the gold. In the quiet of the country her joys became more and more frequent. Often, as she looked upon her little flock, she accused herself of a mother's partiality, but she could not help admiring them. She could not keep from saying to herself that it was rare to meet such beautiful children, all 6 charming in their own ways, and she rejoiced in them and was proud of them.